Hi everybody, it's Jenny from the Missouri Star Quilt Company, and I've got a super fun project for you this year, the beginning of this year, the first quilt. Let's take a look at it. So this is our Whirligig star. Isn't this great? And I have to tell you, I love this line of fabric. It's so beautiful, the painted look, and I can't wait to show you how to make it. So to make this quilt, you're going to need one packet of 10-inch squares, and we have used Painterly Petals by Studio RK for Robert Kaufman. You're going to need some background, and you can use 5 yards of a background, but you know I love precuts, so I used these precuts, and I also used the Missouri Star Quilt Town USA white on white print, that is the little star on the white. I love it. I just love that we did that. You're going to need some fabric for your border. Look at that gorgeous border. I mean, I want a dress out of that. It's so pretty. And you're going to need about 1 3/4 yards. It's a nice big 6-inch border. And on your backing, this is a big quilt. You can see it stretches almost the whole design board. It is 91 by 91. And so you're going to need about 8 1/4 yards. Or you can do 2 3/4 yards of a 108. It's a nice big quilt. Let me show you the backing here. This is our backing. This is what you'll need 2 3/4 yards for. The quilting pattern here is called Flower Pano, and I just think it's perfect for this quilt. So let's get to making it. So this is the block we're talking about, and we're going to make star legs and a whirligig center, and it's very easy and quick. It makes a big quilt fast because the blocks are so large. It'll help you also to have a squaring tool. Now I'm going to use the Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer, but any square that you have that works for your brain is what you want. I mean, use anything with a diagonal line because these legs are all made out of half square triangles. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the legs first, and I'm going to choose this color right here. And one trick I've found, so this is the Missouri Star fabric, and it has a little tiny Missouri Star embossed on the front, and a lot of us use white on white. When you use white on white, it's hard sometimes to tell the front from the back. But what I find is I often, let me just show you this. I often use my jeans, and I put my fabric up on the jean, and I guess it would work with a dark surface like this as well, but I can see that this is obviously the front because I have it on a dark background. And so I'll just sit at my sewing chair and drape it over my jeans, or if I have a dark mat, because right now in my sewing room I have a light mat, so it's hard to tell. So I just drape it over something dark, and then I know that that is the top side. So I want this side to be right sides together. And we're just going to make the 4 1/2 inch, 8 at a time legs. So what I'm going to do is I am going to draw a line diagonally both directions. And I'm just going to use a pencil for that. And just start wherever you want in the middle and work your way out. And we're going to sew 1/4 inch on both sides of these lines. And so we'll come over here to the sewing machine. And I just kind of lay my presser foot along the line and just sew down it. So I don't actually measure because I'm going to be squaring these blocks up later, so it's going to be fine. But this will give you 8 half square triangles. So we're going to go along here, and we're going to flip this around, and we're going to come down the other side. Oops, and I'm caught here. Let me see if I have a little scissor. I can just snip that little thread. There we go. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to see my seam at all. It would have all curled up. All right, then I'm going to go to the other X, and I'm going to do the same thing, 1/4 inch on either side. And by 1/4 inch, it doesn't at all have to be exact. It has to just be close. And so that will all be fixed when we go ahead and cut these. So I like to start cutting on the parts that don't have lines. So I'm going to cut it vertically like this, and I'm going to cut it horizontally like this. And I never have to cut awkwardly with this block. So then I'm going to cut on the lines this way, like this, and on the lines this way, like this. Now I'm going to invite Natalie up here to help me square some of these blocks. Natalie's going to be using the Bloc Loc ruler and I'm going to be using the Clearly Perfect. So you will see two different ways. Whoops, let's make sure this stays on the line. Two different ways to square your blocks. Hi Natalie, thanks for helping me today.
You're welcome.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and trim these. So now we have 8 half square triangles. We're going to be trimming those to 4.5, and I'm going to grab Natalie a Bloc Loc. All right, so I am going to, don't open mine, don't open that one.
Oh,
I'll do 4 and you do 4, yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the Clearly Perfect. I'm lining my stitch line on their stitch line like this, and then I'm going to cut the little edges off right here and cut it around like this. Trim it, make sure it stays on that line. Sometimes it slips. If you have a problem with your rulers slipping, there's a spray you can get. There's a tape you can get. I sometimes use medical tape that I get at Walmart, but there's lots of official sewing things you can get. I'm kind of a creature of habit.
Switch sides.
We probably should.
We're going to elbow each other.
All right, so on this last one, let's switch sides, and then you can show the how to do it with the Bloc Loc.
Okay.
I'll let you move over there.
All right, so for the Bloc Loc, you're just going to line the seam right up with this little ridge and put it up next to it. And this is a 4.5-inch tool, so we just cut all the way around the edge.
It is nice to have a block that is the size of your square.
Mm-hmm.
All right, one more here for me.
And one more for me. If your sides are really straight, you can pull that down into one corner and just cut one side.
Right, same with the Clearly Perfect. If your sides are great, you can just make those work. Now I'm going to put these dark fabric up and press to the dark side so that my seam is hidden behind the dark fabric. Let me grab these over here.
Okay.
Being careful not to get too close to those blades.
There you go.
Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to put these together in legs. And as you can see here, they all come together with the white in the middle. And so I'm going to make 4 sets where the white comes together like this. And I'm going to do that to all my legs so they're ready to go as soon as I'm ready to go with the center part. So I'm going to start with this one and come off. All right, so put them together with the whites together in the middle, making sure your top pieces line up. And then you can just sew down them. And then this one right here, and sew down. And one more. We are going to sew down this one right here, right down the center. Actually, I'm going to start from the bottom on this one. And I'm going to make sure these 2 edges are lining up. They felt like they wanted to move a little bit, so I thought I would do it that way. All right, so this is going to be the outline of our Whirligig block. I'm just going to press these open, and we're going to set them aside. Now these are squared to 4.5, which means all of our other blocks, in order for this to work together, all of our other blocks have to also be squared to 4.5. So I'm going to take this block right here, and I'm going to cut 4 4.5-inch squares for the corners. And I'm just going to start right here on the edge. And actually, you know what? I'm going to trim this little tiny edge off here so I get a straight edge to start with. Because when you're cutting 4.5, you have a little bit of room. All right, so here's my 4.5, and I can line that right up straight on the line, and I don't have to worry about all those little pinks. Now, if you're doing yardage, you can cut a 4.5-inch strip and subcut that into 4.5-inch squares. So I'm going to stack these now. And again, I'm going to start by cutting off that little tiny pinked edge right here. I'm not even really measuring, I'm just taking the pinks off. And then we'll come over 4.5 and make 4.5 inch squares for our corners. There's 1, 2, and 3, 4. All right, we're just going to set these aside with our legs over here. Now we need to make the center block, and we are also going to do that out of 10-inch squares. And so I'm going to grab another background square over here and make sure that it's right sides together, just like that. And I'm going to cut these into 2.5-inch strips because I need 2.5 by 4.5-inch blocks, and I need 4 of those. So again, I'm going to cut off my little edge right here. And 2.5 right here. And 2.5 again. And then I'm going to subcut these into 4.5-inch rectangles. Now the way I like to do rectangles is I like to have a ruler that's that length, and so I'm going to use this little ruler, and instead of going here and counting it on my mat, I'm just going to sit it right here, and I'm going to go to the 4.5-inch line, and I'm just going to cut all of those at once, and I need 4 of those for each block, and all of these at once. And then I'm going to take my background here because I need 4 2.5-inch squares as well to make the little whirligig pieces. So I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to cut 4 2.5-inch. And I should be able to get this right here, 2.5 and 2.5. Yep. All right, so there's my 4 of those. All right, so what we're going to do with these is we're going to separate our pinks from our whites, like this. And we are going to put a whirligig, or I'm sorry, a snowball block on all of our pink blocks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my 2.5-inch square up here. And actually I'm going to turn this because I'm going to cut off this top part. I'm going to cut off down here. So if I put my pinked edge up there, I'll just cut that off later. So that will be good. And I'm going to sew from the top left to the bottom right. And make sure these are all facing the right direction, right sides together. And then we're going to sew from here to here. You can mark a line, you can press a line, or you can use your diagonal seam tape. I'm using my diagonal seam tape, and I'm going to do 4 of these, one right after the other. And one more. And then the last one. Well, not the last one for the quilt. You're going to be making a few of these. All right. So now you can take your rotary cutter or your scissor and you can clip these apart and you can clip them off, and then we'll press them open. You're going to love how this comes together. This little block in and of itself would make a darling little quilt. Just a great little quilt. If you have to make a baby quilt or anything like that, they're just going to make a great little quilt. All right, so we're going to press these open. And I don't know about you, but sometimes when I do my sewing my corner on, it doesn't turn out perfect. So I'm just going to kind of check these and see. And so if I lay my 4.5 ruler on here, I can see if anything is sticking above or sticking out. It's a great way to check. You know, if you tend to have that tendency to make a wing, and I don't always do it, but I sometimes do it. And so I like to just check and make sure that they're all going to go together nice and neat. This one has a little bit of extra off the top. See right here? I'm just going to cut that off, trim that up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to sew one of these. Where the white side is the biggest, we're going to sew a white strip to that. And so we're going to look for the right sides together, and we're going to put these together, and we're going to sew a white strip 1/4 inch right down the side, and we're going to do that to all 4. we'll just grab another one and grab from our stack that we've already cut. And honestly, when you're using white on white, if you don't get it exactly right, don't you dare take it out. Nobody's going to notice the difference. I don't, you know, sometimes we just get so crazy about things and it's like, white on white is going to be fine either side. Nobody's going to give a quilt back to you because it wasn't perfect. I promise. All right. So now, because we've used 2.5-inch strips by 4.5, these should be 4.5-inch blocks. So we're going to come over here to the ironing board and we're going to press these back and we're going to press to the dark side. Actually, you can press whichever way you want. If it wants to go to the light side, let it go to the light side. These particularly want to go because there's more seams on the other side. So we're gonna make their dreams come true and just press it to the light side on this one. And I'm going to go back and press that one flat and then press it the other direction because it wants to go that way badly. All right, so now what we're going to do with this is we're going to put all of our pieces so that the pink comes to the middle like this and turn each one like that and like that, and it makes that cute little whirligig block. So now that we're going to sew this together as a 4-patch like this, I'm going to sew the 2 top pieces, 1/4 inch, and sew the 2 bottom pieces 1/4 inch, and I always lay them out before I sew them. And then I'm going to sew this middle seam right here. And the only thing that really matches up on this middle seam is the middle seam. So make sure that right in the center where those 4 blocks come together, they match. So take a few little stitches and then make sure this middle matches right here. You know, and if you need to like encourage it a little bit, you can do that. But this then becomes the center of our quilt. How cute of a block is that? And we are going to make it even more special by putting a star around it. And so now what we're going to do is we are going to take, I'm just going to move all this stuff out of here, over here if you will, and we are going to take these legs right here, and we're going to line it up around our block. So we've got 1, 2 right here, the sides, and these sides, and here's our bottom sides. And then we're going to put our 4.5-inch blocks that we cut earlier in the corners, like this. There we go. There we are. All right, so now we're going to sew this together to make all of our rows, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew these 2 sides to this top one right here, these top legs. And you can actually do this part ahead of time as well. And so I'm sewing this side, and I'm going to flip it around and come over here and sew this side. And then I'm going to do it to the bottom as well, right here. 1 block to each side. Flip it around. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put the legs to either side of our center block. And so let's go ahead and do that. Now you are going to want to match that center seam again with this. It will help keep you on track. And you won't lose your point as long as you stay on the seam side of that crisscross on the back. I'll show you that in a minute. All right, let's take a look at this one real quick, real close. Now see how these threads cross right here? You have a seam going this way and a seam going that way. As long as you stay on that point or on the seam side, you won't lose your point. And that's just a little bit of information. And we have points coming from both sides, so we'll just hold our breath and see if it works. But again, nobody's ever given a quilt back to me because the points weren't perfect. So I'm okay with it. I don't work too hard, especially on this one. My seams seem like they're small. Oh, it worked. It's a miracle. All right, let's do this one. Now we're going to sew the top and bottom to this block, and we will have our stars ready. All right, so here is our cute little star. Isn't that darling? All right, let's press it. Now when you make these blocks, you're going to pull out 25 pieces for your star legs. And because there's 25 blocks in the quilt behind me, and you're going to need 25 different legs. And then you get 2 of the whirligigs out of each 10-inch square. And so you're going to pull out 13 of those. And you'll have an extra, or a couple of extras. But look how cute this is. Isn't that darling? All right, let's see how this fits in the quilt. Now, I did not sash this or anything. I just made my stars, and I hung them right next to each other. And so I have 5 by 5. So I hope you'll have fun with this. I hope you'll make it your own. If you decide you want to put a sashing in it, you know, or make 4 for a baby quilt, how cute would that be? I mean, just have some fun with it, play with it, make it your own. And we hope you enjoyed this tutorial on the Whirligig Star from the Missouri Star Quilt Company. Hi everybody, it's Jenny from the Missouri Star Quilt Company. We hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you aren't already part of the Missouri Star Quilt Company family, be sure to subscribe so you won't miss a thing. And if you click that bell, it'll notify you every time a new tutorial comes out. See you next Friday.